Hello, and welcome to The Connection. This podcast is about understanding and building the connection we have with others and with ourselves. It is my hope that through this podcast, you'll be able to have more joy and fulfillment in your life. I'm your host, Jared Hurst. Last week, we spoke a little bit about surrender, being able to have this goal in our life that we want to strive towards and work towards, but at the same time, being willing to surrender that things may not happen in the way that we envision and that they may not happen in the time that we envision. So that way we can continue to move ourselves forward in a positive direction, but also be willing to accept the ways in which grace and the universe bring new and amazing things into our lives. This week I wanted to talk about something that's kind of similar. It's a topic that you've heard me touch on through when I've talked about self-esteem and self-improvement and things like that. And that topic is self-acceptance and introspection. Now, if you've been listening to my podcast for a while and you really have a great memory, then you might have heard me talk about this idea where I've had times where I felt like an internal conflict. And the internal conflict that I've had is around this idea of self-love, but self-improvement, and being able to accept ourselves, but also being able to grow. And I want to talk about a couple of different ways in which I see that in my life and some things that I've recently learned that tie into this whole concept. Now, whether you're dealing with relationships or friendships or careers or whatever it is that you're working towards in life, you might have heard people talk about this idea of, well, if it didn't work out, then it wasn't meant for me. It wasn't meant to be in my life. And I like that to some extent, because this idea of when things don't work out, sometimes it's because we're being redirected. And I truly believe that. I truly believe that there's times in life that when things don't work out, it's because we're being redirected towards something that's better for us. It's towards something that is going to create a better life for us in the long run. But it can be really hard when you're in that moment and you want something so badly that when you are redirected, that you're willing to surrender and accept that this wasn't meant for me, or this person wasn't meant for me. And you hear that a lot in relationship advice, that if things didn't work out with somebody, it's because you weren't the right fit and they weren't meant for you. And I always had this intellectual struggle with this idea of that when things don't work out in my life in different ways, they're not meant for me. Because as much as I love this idea of acceptance and loving ourselves as we are, it felt restrictive to the point I'm an open-minded person. Like, I love hearing other people's opinions and perspectives and seeing something that I haven't seen before, seeing something that I haven't recognized. So I always believe that it's really important that we keep our mind open to new possibilities and new experiences. But I also believe that it's really important that we value growth and that we have a certain level of introspection and accountability in our lives where we look at ourselves and we see where things could be improved. You know, when I look at relationships and things like that, and I get done with those relationships, I can see where I've made mistakes. I can see where I've acted from a space of emotion, both in relationships and after relationships, and I've taken action that I don't agree with, that I wish I would have done differently. There are times where I look at my life and I can say, I know I have these areas where I want to grow in an authentic way. My authentic desire is that I improve in these specific areas. So how do I mesh these two ideas of both accepting myself, being willing to have things come and go from my life and recognize that not everything is meant for me and that sometimes I'm being redirected, sometimes I'm needing to surrender to something new, but then also taking accountability and growing and improving and developing myself. Now, you've heard me reference this before, and I'll say it again. One of my friends, his name's Henry Amar. I love Henry. And he talks about how we need to love ourselves as we are, but love ourselves enough to grow. I really love that concept. And so I reference it a lot because I think it can give us some perspective on how to live our lives. Another way of looking at it is have compassion upon yourself. Have love for yourself. Recognize that not everything in this world is because of you, but then also take accountability for the things that you can do in life. This concept came to me recently, this new way of looking at this. I was reading this book. I don't recommend the book, otherwise I would be telling you the title. But I was reading this book and it had this concept in it which was really fascinating to me. The author was a psychologist. And one of the things that she said, that if you look at childhood development, if you look at a child and the way that their mind works, that when we are a child, we believe that something that happens to us is because of us. That if something happens in my life, it has to have some basis in something about myself, something that I've done to create it, or something about me that is causing this result. Because we're very self-centered focus. Not necessarily a negative way, it's just the way that our mind works at that time in our life. I started thinking about that concept of the things that happen to me are because of me. And I asked myself, do I still think that way? Do I still think that the things that happen to me are because of me? And when I started really evaluating that, I realized that in a lot of ways I do. In a lot of ways, I look at something, and whenever something happens in my life, a relationship doesn't work out, a friendship doesn't work out, a career doesn't work out, whatever it is that I'm working on in life, when it doesn't work out, I always look at myself first and say, what did I do to cause this? And there's been times that that's gotten me into some trouble because I've had times where I've felt really emotional and like, why? What did I do? What did I do to cause this? I think it's actually a really powerful mindset, like looking at ourselves and saying, what did I do to cause this? Because it's a growth mindset. It's looking at your situation and saying, where could I improve? What happened? But at the same time, when you're constantly looking at yourself and saying, what did I do? What did I do wrong? How did I cause this? It's not always in your best interest. You can become self-critical. You can take things that don't have anything to do with you and make them your problem. And so when I was thinking about this statement of things happen to me because of me, and do I still believe that? Do I believe that? I recognize that the answer is yes and no. Yes, I create my reality. I get to pick how I respond to things. I get to some extent, I control the emotions that I experience. I control the actions that I take. I can control my response. There's a lot of things that are within my control. And there's a lot of things that I can do in order to help myself grow and develop and become the person that I want to be. But at the same time, not everything is about me, and not everything is in my control. I started saying this sentence to myself recently, and that is, I can't control the thoughts, actions, and emotions of the people around me, but I can control my thoughts, actions, and emotions. how I show up, the energy I have, and the way that I treat other people. Like, those things are in my control. I can't always control how everybody else treats me and how they react to me. And I think that is a beautiful thing to start to recognize and look at things and see it from both ways. And I've started to do this in my life, and I can already see how it's improving my mindset and it's improving the way I handle difficult situations, is when I look at it and say, okay, what things inside of this situation, this career, this goal that I had, this relationship, this friendship, where could I improve? And where are the places that I need to hold myself accountable for the way things turned out? Because that's important. Accountability is important. There's a lot of people that I don't think take any level of accountability in life. They constantly point their fingers at things outside of themselves and say, you're at fault, this is at fault, this is at fault. And they have this victim mindset where everything is about how everything else in the world treats them. So I sit there and I'm looking at it and saying, where is my level of accountability? Where are the places that I can grow and develop? And then at the same time, I look at it and say, what are the things that caused the outcome of this situation that are outside of my control? The things that are about other people. Because let's say we're talking about relationships for a moment. There are times where you hear this concept, and I talk about this all the time, that we're like jigsaw puzzle pieces, that sometimes we're just not the right fit for each other. But what if we are the right fit and it still doesn't work out? I think there's times where that happens, where even though two people could be the right fit for each other, one person or both people are still dealing with negative beliefs or issues with their identity, and that those issues with their identity and those negative beliefs are keeping them or keeping you from acting on the things that you truly want. Have you ever had something in your life, whether it's a career, whether it's a goal, whether it's a relationship, a friendship, and you truly wanted it, but you didn't feel like you deserved it? So you self-sabotaged it, or you pushed it away, or you did something. Everybody does that kind of thing. People allow themselves to cope with things in negative ways, or allow their identities and their beliefs to drive their actions. That's why it's so important for us to do the work, to become aware of our identities and our belief systems and how those are influencing our thoughts, actions, and emotions. Because when we become aware of those, then we get to start choosing whether we're going to allow those belief systems to continue to make those decisions for us, or whether we're going to choose a different course. So there's that in life, where you might be the right fit for something, a career, a relationship, a friendship, and the reason that it doesn't work out is because something that's outside of your control has some type of a limiting belief or whatnot that is keeping them from taking the action that they truly want to take. And then sometimes it is a bad fit. Sometimes it is a difference in values. Sometimes it is a difference in vision of where you see. You go for that job and you envision XYZ for your life, and the person that's hiring has a completely different vision. It doesn't mean that you're not a good fit for that job. It just means that the person that was in charge didn't see that your vision matched with their vision. And so in some level, you weren't the right fit. You may have had all the qualifications for that career, for that job. But because their vision was different than your vision, you just weren't compatible. And you see that in all those areas of life where you may have this incredible chemistry and connection and common interests and whatever it might be, but there's something that just isn't in alignment, so it doesn't work out. I think the thing that really came to me that helped me a lot is looking at it and say, when things don't work out in life, when that job doesn't work out, when that relationship doesn't work out, when that friendship doesn't work out, did I give it my all? Did I act at a level that I can be proud of within the confines of my knowledge base? What I mean by that is, if I am going for a career and I interview at the best level that I'm capable of, and then I find out later through the course of personal development, and maybe I'm listening to a book or a podcast, or I'm reading something, and I learn some new skill. And I realize that if I would have had that skill when I did that interview, they might have picked me. So it's really easy to play this what if game and be like, well, if I would have done this, then this might have worked out differently. A lot of people do that in relationships. They look at it and say, if only I had eaten healthier and taken better care of my body, then maybe they would have found me more attractive and they would have liked me. Or maybe if I would have been more confident, then they would have liked me. Or if I would have been more assertive, then they would have liked me. Or if I would have gone and done that kind of date instead of doing that kind of date. It's easy to sit there and second guess ourselves. But you just ask yourself and say, based on the knowledge that I had, am I proud of the effort that I put forward? And if the answer is yes, then you did your best. You did your best based on what you had. And now you're growing, you're developing, you're learning, you're trying new things. And the next one, that won't be the case anymore. And if you look back on it and you say, you know what, I didn't do my best. I didn't try as hard as I could. I can see where in my marriages where there's things that I could have done better. Now, some of that is me not knowing. There's a lot of things that I've learned that I didn't know back then, but there's other ways in which I look at my life, and if I'm really honest with myself, I knew better and I could have done better. I could have showed more love or been more supportive or been a better listener or whatever it might be. And I can't sit there the rest of my life regretting the decisions that I made back then. All I can do is learn from that mistake, learn from those failures, and grow from it in the future. I know this isn't a really long podcast episode, but hopefully you can look at that in your life. I would imagine you probably have areas in your life where you have been on one side of this fence, where you've either accepted yourself so much that you haven't sat back and really evaluated yourself and taken accountability and shown and asked yourself, where could I improve? When you see a situation that didn't work out the way that you wanted it to, always ask yourself, what could I have done better? How could I have contributed to a different outcome? I know there's probably situations that I'm not thinking of where you're thinking, well, Jared, I didn't have any control over that. Maybe. I just would challenge you to think about it, to look at it from an honest perspective and see where you can grow. Because even if you were a victim, you gain a level of control back when you look at a situation and see where you could have done something different. It's not for them, it's for you. It's for you to say, how could I have created more of what I want? And then on the other hand, if you're being overly critical and you're looking at all the things you could have done and you're playing that what if game and you're saying, I could have done this, I could have done that, I could have done that, give yourself some grace. Look and see whether or not you put in a solid effort, whether you're proud of the effort that you put in, and recognize that you don't have to be perfect for things to work out in life. You don't. All the people that I've truly loved have had flaws. I've had weaknesses. All the things that I've really wanted in life have not been perfect. The careers that I've wanted, the friends that I've wanted, the accomplishments I've wanted, they weren't perfect. Why do I expect that of myself? So give yourself some grace. Be patient with yourself. Keep working. I know you can do it. I believe in you. Until next week, remember that you are not alone.